Today, we're diving into a story that's been 500 years in the making. It's a story about empires, about physics, and about one single, very special precious metal. We're going to see how a place called the mountain that eats men and the super smart algorithms of Wall Street have basically set the table for a massive, spectacular showdown. And trust me, this isn't just about money. It's about what happens when the real physical world slams head-on into a world of paper promises. Take a look at this number. $69.23. Now, that is not just a price flickering on a screen. No, it's the final chapter in a half-millennium-long story. It's the sound of a snap. It's the exact moment a global system stretched way past its breaking point finally just gave way. So how on earth did we get here? And what does this one price signal for, well, for everything? To get it, we have to follow the thread from an ancient, blood-soaked mountain all the way to our crazy, hyper-modern, tech-obsessed world. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start in the chaotic near future, dropping you right into the middle of the main event, what we're calling the coming singularity. Then we're going to jump in a time machine, go back 5 centuries to a place nicknamed the Mountain of Skulls to see what silver really costs. After that, we'll pull back the curtain on Wall Street's rigged game and a century of slick manipulation. We'll then look at the inevitable squeeze, where modern tech just completely overwhelms the old system. And finally, we'll come full circle right back to the crisis to witness the great revaluation. Okay, let's do this. I'm dropping you right into the eye of the storm. The date is December 2025. You have to understand, for decades, pretty much everyone on Wall Street thought of silver as, a boring industrial metal. Its price was managed, contained. But in this moment, right now, the dam has absolutely, catastrophically broken. This is not some abstract crisis on a spreadsheet. This is physical. This is real. I want you to just imagine the feeling. The cold shock of walking into one of those massive, fortified vaults in Shanghai or London or the COMEX in New York, the places that are supposed to back the entire financial system, and finding nothing, just empty racks. The actual metal, the bedrock that all those trillions of dollars in paper promises are built on, it's just gone.
And the speed is what's truly terrifying. 60%. 60% of all the registered available for delivery silver on the main Western exchange just poof, vanished. In 4 days. Think about that. An asset that's supposed to be this rock-solid store of value is suddenly acting like some penny stock, and it's sending these violent shockwaves through every other market on the planet. So what do we even call this thing? We're calling it a singularity, and it's not just a fancy word. It's a collision, a head-on crash between two massive opposing forces. On one side, you've got the exponential, unstoppable hunger of our tech world, our world that needs solar panels and EVs and AI data centers more and more every single day. And on the other side, you've got the hard, brutal, unchangeable reality of geology. You can only dig so much of this stuff out of the earth. This whole story is about what happens when that unstoppable force meets that immovable object.
To really, truly understand why the banks are in a full-blown panic, why those vaults are empty, we have to get one thing straight. The silver in your phone or in a solar panel didn't just magically appear. It has a history, a really dark one. And to understand it, we have to go back to one specific place, a mountain in Bolivia that the locals gave a terrifying name, the mountain that eats men. And that brings us to the second part of our story. We need to uncover the true cost of silver. And I'm not talking about dollars and cents. I'm talking about the cost in pure energy and, tragically, in human lives.
So, back in 1545, some Spanish conquistadors are trekking through the Andes, and they stumble on a mountain that contains an amount of silver that is just, it's almost impossible to believe. This was Potosí. The silver that poured out of this one mountain literally changed the world. It funded the entire Spanish Empire for centuries, their armies, their fleets, everything. It turned Potosí, this remote little spot high in the mountains, into a global metropolis, bigger and richer than London or Paris at the time. But all of that wealth was built on a foundation of unbelievable suffering.
The engine that drove all this suffering was a system called the mita. Now, the Spanish took an old Incan idea of community labor and twisted it into this grotesque, brutal form of slavery. They forced indigenous communities to send a percentage of their men to work in the mines, often for a year straight. For most of them, it was a death sentence.
And the conditions, there are things out of a nightmare. We're talking 20-hour shifts, deep underground. Men wouldn't see the sun for weeks. They had to haul these heavy bags of ore, sometimes over 100 pounds, up hundreds of feet on these flimsy, slippery ladders made of leather. Cave-ins happened all the time.
But the worst killer was silent. It was mercury poisoning. To get the silver out of the rock, they used a process that involved mixing the crushed ore with mercury with their bare feet. They were breathing in the toxic fumes constantly. The effects were horrific. Their teeth would fall out, their bodies would just shake with uncontrollable tremors.
The numbers are just staggering. It's hard to even comprehend. Historians figure that over 3 centuries, something like 8 million people, men, women, children, died in and around those mines. The workers themselves came to believe the mountain was some kind of god that demanded blood in exchange for its silver. And that's where the name comes from, the mountain that eats men.
So why this incredibly grim history lesson? Because you have to understand this one key point. The idea that silver is cheap is an illusion. It's a modern invention, an anomaly. Real silver is actually a measure of a colossal amount of energy and human life. It's not just a number you trade on a screen. It's a physical thing forged in suffering. It's the blood of empire. And when you have a financial system that tries to bury that reality under an infinite mountain of paper promises, eventually reality pushes back, hard. And that brings us perfectly into the modern age. The battle over silver's price moved out of the mines and onto the trading floors. And for the better part of a century, the story has been all about suppression, about manipulation, a rigged game, really, designed to cut silver off from its history as money and keep its price under control. Let's just look at 2 key moments. First, back in the US, you have what people started calling the crime of '73. The government basically said silver isn't money anymore, only gold is. This caused a massive deflationary shock, triggered a huge economic depression, and just ruined farmers and miners. Then, fast forward to 1934. The U.S. passes the Silver Purchase Act to help its own miners. But in doing so, they triple the global price of silver overnight. This absolutely crushed the economy of China, which was the last major country still using silver as its money. Their whole economy just imploded. And you better believe that is a lesson China has never, ever forgotten. In both cases, government actions were used to break silver's connection to money, which made its price way easier to manipulate for the next 100 years.
In the last 50 years, the game got even more blatant. You had the outsiders, like the Hunt brothers in 1980. They were worried about inflation, so they tried to buy up all the physical silver. And they almost did it. But they weren't stopped by the market. They were stopped by the referees, who literally changed the rules in the middle of the game to liquidation only. You could sell, but you couldn't buy. The price, of course, crashed. But then, more recently, you had the insiders. This wasn't an attack from the outside. This was an inside job. From 2008 to 2016, traders at JP Morgan, one of the biggest banks on earth, ran what federal prosecutors, not me, prosecutors, called a criminal enterprise to rig the price using the paper market. And look, this isn't some conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy fact, proven by the Department of Justice. We have their chat logs. I mean, look at this. Lol, easy money. These guys are just joking about it. In one message, a trader tells his buddy to tell Greg to wake up. A few moments later, that trader, Greg Smith, starts dumping thousands of huge, fake sell orders onto the market. It's a technique called spoofing. You place orders you have no intention of actually filling. The whole point is to create an illusion, to trick the market into thinking there's massive selling pressure, which scares other people into selling for real. It drives the price down and allows the bank to profit. So eventually, they got caught. And JP Morgan paid a massive fine, $920 million. But let's be real. For a bank that size, that's not a punishment. That's just the cost of doing business. The real story, the much more interesting story, is what they were doing while all this was going on. And here it is. This was the secret to the whole magic trick. It was this brilliant, two-faced strategy. With one hand, their traders were using these fraudulent paper orders to smash the price down, while with the other hand, a different part of the bank was quietly using those artificially low prices to buy up one of the biggest private hoards of physical silver on the planet. They rigged the game, and then they played both sides. But now, in our December 2025 scenario, that game is over. So you have to ask, right? What could possibly be powerful enough to break a system that's been suppressed for 100 years? It wasn't another billionaire or another hedge fund. The answer is physics. It was the undeniable, unstoppable reality of industrial demand. Here's the thing about silver. It's basically a superpower metal. It's the most electrically conductive and reflective element on Earth. There is no substitute, period. You want a green energy revolution? You can't have it without silver. And this chart right here, this shows the exact moment the game changed. The solar industry started shifting from an old tech to a new tech called TOPCON. It's way more efficient, which is great, but there's a catch. A huge catch.
The new panels need 50 to 100% more silver per panel. Demand from just this one sector didn't just grow, it went vertical. By late 2025, solar panels alone are eating up something like 300 million ounces of silver a year. That's almost a third of all the silver mined on the entire planet. And it's not just solar, it's this three-headed demand monster. You've got electric vehicles, which use twice as much silver as a regular car. You've got the explosion in AI and all those massive data centers that need silver connectors so they don't overheat and catch fire. I mean, the pie chart tells the whole story. Industry is now just devouring the market, leaving less and less for anyone else. So demand is a rocket ship, okay? But what about supply? Well, this is the other side of the vice that's closing. We haven't found a new Potosí. In fact, there hasn't been a major silver discovery in decades. Global mine output actually peaked way back in 2016, and it's been slowly falling ever since. And it makes sense, right? If you've spent years artificially suppressing the price, why would any mining company spend billions of dollars looking for more of it? They wouldn't. So it really all boils down to this one simple, powerful imbalance. You have demand that is exploding, driven by these massive tech trends that are not going away, and it's running smack into a brick wall of supply that is stagnant or even falling. This is the fundamental truth that all the paper games on Wall Street could hide for a while, but they could never, ever make it go away. And then, just when things couldn't get any tighter, the whales entered the pool. First, China. Remembering what happened to them in 1934, they started buying up all the physical silver they could find to guarantee their absolute dominance of the solar industry. Then, another giant shows up, Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund. They start buying up physical silver by the truckload to diversify away from oil. Now, you have to understand, the entire silver market is surprisingly small. And when you have entities with trillions of dollars jumping into a market that small, it's not like an elephant jumping into a bathtub. It's like an elephant jumping into a teacup. And so that brings us right back to where we started, December 22nd, 2025. But now that we know the bloody history, the century of manipulation, the unstoppable physics of supply and demand, now we can understand exactly what's happening. This isn't a crash. This is the great revaluation. This right here, this is the heart of the breakdown. The paper market, places like COMEX, was basically a giant game of musical chairs. For every one single ounce of actual physical silver they had in the vault, they had sold sometimes as many as 400 paper claims against it. It's like a coat check, giving out 400 tickets for the same coat. The system works fine as long as only a few people show up to claim their coat, but when giant countries and huge corporations all show up at once and demand the real thing, the music stops and the system breaks. The physical market, meanwhile, it's just been drained dry. And the market is now screaming a word that you only ever hear during a full-blown panic: backwardation. It's just a fancy term for pure desperation. It means people are willing to pay way more to get physical silver in their hands right now than to wait for a delivery in the future. Why? Because they've lost all faith that there will be any silver to deliver in the future. They want the real thing, and they want it now, no matter the cost. And if you want to see just how desperate things have gotten, look at London. The interest rates to just borrow physical silver have spiked to an insane 40%. This is trapping all the big banks who were short, the ones who sold silver they didn't actually own, betting the price would go down. To avoid defaulting, they're now being forced to pay a 40% annualized rate just to borrow the metal they promised to deliver. It is a sign of total, complete system failure. And just like that, the story comes full circle. For centuries, that mountain in Bolivia ate men in exchange for its silver. And today, in this financial singularity, that same brutal force of physical reality has turned around, and it has finally eaten the short sellers who bet against it. So what we're all watching here is so much more than a price spike. It's a historic reckoning. The whole era of cheap silver, an era that was built on the backs of millions who suffered and maintained by Wall Street algorithms, that era is over. The market is finally, violently rediscovering the true value of this metal. The dam is broken, and this entire 500-year story of blood and data and manipulation, it all boils down to one final, unavoidable question. The one the market is forcing everyone, from governments to banks to you, to answer right now. In a world where the paper promise has been broken, what are you actually holding? Do you have the real thing, or do you just have a piece of paper?